was going to be asked to make a speech.
Well, guests and visitors. All right, now listen, today we're going to be talking about, because everybody's paying attention here attentively, slavery, plantation, you know, and its effects on the black person and their black mentality. Now, as you were reading your chapter today, I know you came across many things that probably brought a lot of wonderment to your mind. Now, we've talked about this before sometimes, but really not in depth. And one of the first things I would like to ask you, this class here, is what type of effect do you think slavery had on the mentality of the black man? Just what did it do for him? Did it do anything for him, or what? What would you say about that? Well, with all these hands here, now letting me see. Well, what would you say about that, Ishi?
Well, it tended to suppress the black people who were slaves in the plantation. Castrated their total outlook of life itself. They could not, if they were constantly trying to get out of the situation that they were in, but through the different acts of I don't know.
Well, you know, with these different type of acts, you know, what do you think it did for the black? Do you think slavery was of any beneficial?
Oh, definitely not.
In other words, you're saying that slavery did not do anything for the black man. Now, would you agree with that, Mr. Roberson? You think slavery did anything for the black man?
No.
All right, now you said no. Now, why not?
I mean, it didn't have to accomplish anything. All it did was just, you know.
Speak loudly now.
I said it didn't have to accomplish anything. I mean, it just made them want their freedom. It took away their freedom. You know, like they, I mean, you know, destroyed the nation of Africa.
Destroy the nation of Africa. All right, well then, what did it do mentally to the black man in America, though? What did it do mentally to the black man in America? What would you say about it, Michelle?
At the very beginning, it made me feel like they were less than a white person was, because the way they were teaching and the way they weren't teaching it, they taught them that it was, if you were black, that you were dirty, that you were wrong, that you were stupid. And it made them start thinking that, and so they continued to think like that.
Think like what?
Like that they were no good, like they were lower, until later on, there was, the majority of them thought like that, and then a few thought, you know, they were just as good as a white person, and later on as it got, the years went by and everything, they started getting more sense of value to themselves.
Mm-hmm. Now, in the value, you know, that was given on, or rather given to a black person at this time, what standards were being used to, you know, to judge? What standards were being injected into this person, and as far as his value of himself and of other people? What criteria was being injected into them? Criteria, in other words. What criteria was he using to look at himself? Ms. Broadus?
He was using the criteria that the white man had given him, which was a white criteria.
All right, now what is a white criteria?
Saying that you must have what, you know, you have to have this land and your skin ought to be white or you're no good, or
all right, you said first, you said land. Now, when you say land, what do you mean? What are you talking about?
materialistic things, actually.
All right, materialistic values.
Yeah.
All right, then you're using color also, right? So in other words, if a black man did not have any type of white blood in him, then he really, as you might say, did not have any real value. So then could we safely conclude that color then has affected the black man's mental value of himself then and now? What would you say about that, Wayne?
The purpose of slavery was to it was a old fight, you know, between the white man and the black man. It's a fight that started somewhere in Jerusalem and Egypt, somewhere down the line, and once upon a time it was believed that the black man had whites as slaves, you know. So So to get back at this, he used slavery here and tried to create the same effect that it had upon the white people by causing the blacks to develop a inferiority type of complex, you know, animalistic complex of themselves, you know, thinking themselves somewhere lower than the human definition, you know, definition of human being. And right now, today, you know, it's hard, you know, to actually have pride in yourself as far as being black. The point I'm trying to make is that the white man blotted out of our mind some type of way. I guess he did this because he knew the power of the black person, you know, from historical preferences, you know, to make us feel inferior, to suffer, you know, this slavery that it was so-called and placed upon him. And but the thing that it did to the black man, it made black men, it developed a hate within black men, you know, for the white man.
Of white man or of himself?
No. Well, of himself, you know, in a basic sense, you know, but more so for the white man, because black man knew that white man was the one that, is the one that got him in this, you know, predicament. And so,
Okay, well, here's one thing, you know, that's basically wrong. All right, then, you know, all right, let's get back to the color complex then, you know. Now, generally, many blacks have tended to think and believe, I still do believe this today, that the lighter you are, the better you are. And when I say that, I mean that because you're light, this automatically does something to you in as far as your value, your beauty is concerned. So in other words, just bringing out one thing and saying that, you know, if you're light, then this automatically gives you beauty. In other words, would you say, you know, that the black man's mind has advanced far enough to see beyond color? Huh?
his mind was advanced far.
No, I'm not talking about then. I'm talking about in comparison, let's say, to now. You know, when we make value judgment, it's just like, you know, we mentioned this before. Sometimes you can hear a bunch of young ladies talking as to preferences, as to characteristics, you know, that guys have, and one thing they'll have is that they have to have curly hair. You know, curly hair always being good hair. This is what we feel that curly hair is. This is one thing. All right, then another thing you have, you know, they say, well, he's got curly hair and he's light. You know, and this lightness, as you might say, does something to it. A person can be just terribly ugly in being light. You know, but because they are light, they're viewed in a different fashion. And because a person is black, they're looked at differently. Even though a person can be beautiful and be black, you know, as a saying goes, many blacks today still base their, I guess you might say, beauty judgment on color judgment. Would you say this is true, Ms. DeHart?
Not today, but a long time ago. I think that women used to go for men who are lighter, and men used to go for women who were lighter and, you know, resembled a white person, you know, I guess because they thought that they were much better.
Mm-hmm. Well, now that's one opinion right there. Who would disagree with that opinion? What would you say? What would you say, Melise?
It's still going on today because, you know, a lot of black women, you know, they see a black man with light skin and light eyes, you know, he's supposed to be fine, you know.
What makes him fine?
Because he's closer to white. You know, blacks usually have brown eyes, black eyes. He has, you know, gray or light colored eyes. He's supposed to be, you know, so good, but it's still going on because still black women that think like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a little controversy here. All right, just a minute. Okay, Mary, go ahead.
No, I was going to agree with what Melise says, but it's going on today, yes, but not as great as it went on in, say, maybe 20, 25 years ago.
Uh-huh.
Because, I mean, you seldom find people running around telling them, well, I want to find me a yellow nigga.
Well, I mean, they probably wouldn't say it out loud, I mean, but, you know, when they look at each other, this is what they care. You know, now, I had the experience of talking to a student who was very, very personal with me, and she was about to get married. Now, she knew this very, very dark person, black person, I'm not going to say dark, just black. And she also had another guy on the hook, too. And one of the main reasons why she didn't marry the other guy was because she knew that the children that they would have would be black, and she felt that, you know, it's going to be pretty hard. You know, there's no sense in bringing up, you know, other black children, you know, to have this harder time. So she married the lighter guy. You know, I'm quite sure she didn't tell him that, you know, when she married him, but, you know, this was in the back of her mind, you know. Now, I mean, you know, we can sit and laugh, and we can say black is beautiful, but actually, you know, when it gets down to it, to a certain degree, many people are still imbued with a light complex. Miss.
Okay, well, that's part of what you were talking about before, the slave mentality. Okay, and I understand that because I know that the white man, in order to survive and to constantly uplift himself and to constantly degrade the black man, he had to put that in our minds, you know. That's all we see, you know. When we turn on the TV, we see white women, you know, smiling and selling toothpaste, you know, and all this other stuff. And, okay, that's part of that slave mentality that makes a black woman say, I want somebody that's light, you know, that has light hair. You know, there are groups of people, you know, that do that now on a majority, but, you know, like Creole, you know, people and people like that, mulattoes, you know, what have you, like Petty John. But, you know, that's all part of the slave mentality, and that's where it comes from, because I think that slavery completely destroyed the psychic of the black man, because I don't know anybody that's black that what the white man terms as, or what sociology tell us is normal. Nobody black goes through a normal childhood, and if you do, if you're black and you're brought up in an integrated environment, you have transitional shock. Once you grow up and you discover that it's not it's not an equal world, you know, you have a shock. Or if you grow up in an all-black neighborhood, you know, and you're pushed out into a white society, you know, that's shock. So I think that slavery has destroyed, you know, the black man's psychic. He doesn't have it. He has it, you know, but it's harder to develop. Like, we go through a lot of changes, whereas somebody white would do this automatically, you know. If somebody says something to us, you know, we look at them twice, and, you know, we look at them hard. Like last night, somebody hit me with a snowball when I was walking. A white boy hit me with a snow. He was throwing snow at this other white dude. And I was walking and it hit me, you know, and I jumped and I said something, you know. And he looked and he hung his head and goes, well, you know, I said, well, you better, you know. Well, if it had been somebody black, I would say, you know, just be cool, brother, you know, and I would have laughed it off. But he was white, and I couldn't do that.
So in other words, that has really affected the way that you've been able to look at the white person.
That's right.
All right, now, in other words, Ms. Brewster is saying, you know, that because of this slave mentality, she hasn't been able to look at the white person in the same aspect of being a human being. Now, do you feel that way too, Easter?
Would you repeat the question?
In other words, you know, as you might say, the way, see, Beverly described a situation, you know, in which she was hit by a snowball. All right, and the way she reacted to, one would have been of calmness, and the other was a frustration and hostility. One was, let's say, you know, it was done by a white person, and she acted violently, whereas if it had been done by a black person, she wouldn't have acted violently. Now, do you, you know, feel that this is true, let's say, generally speaking?
Well, I don't know. Well, I can speak for me, but see, I'll talk shit to both of them.
One thing I would like to bring out here is, now, you know, within the black race we have every shade from blackness to whiteness. You know, and if we're just being specific, you know, and looking at people generally, you know, a person is dark, and they know that they're dark or black, whatever you want to say. Now, would you say that this person mentality is affected because of the way he looks at himself by being very, very dark? What would you say about that, Ken?
I wouldn't say it's affected.
Hmm?
I wouldn't say it's affected. I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't think you think about it that much. I mean, I just think that would be affected, really. I mean, not now, I'm trying to be affected.
Did you ever think about it?
Sure, I mean, like,
And when you thought about it, what did you think?
Well, you know, I think about that time, you know, we was talking about Mando and all this stuff, you know, like you go
Uh-huh.
outside and play in the sun, you know, and then like maybe somebody might call you a nigger or something, or black or something like that, you know, and then that might be the only time it really comes to your mind, so then you might be wondering about how can I get lighter or something like that, you know, but then that's what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
that's
Well,
what
Ken, really, now have you ever thought how you might get lighter?
Me?
I'm not talking to nobody else.
Franklin.
I mean, like, well, you know, like,
Well, no, let's just be honest now.
seriously, I mean, when I was young, you know, like I used to play baseball in the street, you know, and I used to try, like, I knew I was dark already, but, you know, I used to try to dodge the sun, every shade spot, I try to walk in, you know.
Now really, now see, now, you know, I mean, now we can laugh at that, you know, just like I gave the example, you know, that when I would go out in the park and play ball, come home, take the bath, you know, knowing I was getting darker and wanting to be of a better race, quote unquote, you know, I'd go find a little jar of Natiola, you know, and, well, no, see this, you know, and coming up at that time, this was the thing, they said this was a blemishes, see, but this was a bleaching cream, this is what it is, and it is still on the market, people,
That's right.
and it is still being sold mostly, in fact, 99%, I ain't saying 99, 100% to blacks. And it's still used for the same purpose, you know, to whiten you, make you more acceptable to society, you know. Now, that was a very frank admission, you know, back then, but the thing about it is that a lot of us do that inadvertently. And I don't believe it's hardly anybody in this room at one time might not have thought, say, gee whiz, what it would be like to be white if I could be white. Now, so this is one way, you know, in which it has affected us, the way we look at ourselves. It's just like, well, let's say one person say, you know, they'd like to be darker too, you know, but then again, that person was made darker, never know how they really would react. So therefore, you know, I think we'd all have to say that color affects us whether we want to admit it or not.
Well, it's not so much as the color. It's well, I imagine it is the color, but it's when people, you know, in your social life respond to the color, you know, that you are. Like, you know, it takes reinforcement, you know, based on reinforcement. You know, like light-skinned people, you know, they were accepted into the White Houses, you know, like dark-skinned people, kind of outcasts, you know, and the light-skinned people got into the White Houses and they gather some of the riches and you find in some areas, you know, where the light-skinned families are you know, not only socially uplifted, but economically uplifted. They are more accepted, you know, by the white man than the dark-skinned guy.
Do you think this is true today? How many think this is true today, that the black man, I say not the black man, that the light black man is more accepted socially today, you know, let's say, than the black man?
You mean by the white man?
By the white man.
Sure.
How many agree with that? How many agree with that? And if you don't agree, how many disagree? Get your hands up, people. Now, you have to go one way or the other. You know, it has to be black or white. Well, not everybody, one of their opinions out here. So, well, this is true.
But you know, that shows you how the white man has deceived us, because he was constantly telling us to get light, and all the time he wants to get dark. They spend more money on suntan lotion and under them ultra ray lamps getting cancer so they can be dark like you. But constantly they lying to us and telling us, you know, that to be white is to be right, you know, and white women buy black stockings so their legs can look nicer, you know. They put red, they color their cheeks, You know, they color their faces, you know, they dye their hair. So all the time, you know, they're trying to get like us. So evidently, we must be pretty good, you know.
Well, now you've expressed an opinion there. What would you say? Yes.
Well, you know, departments to their people do go sit out in the sun and try to get dark, you know, that's the truth, what she says, but also it goes back to saying, you know, blacks for a long time have tried to become more like whites, you know.
Yes. Go ahead, Lana. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a guy named, a sociologist named Thurston Douglas that has a book called Theory of the Leisure Class. And in it, he talks about just what, like she just mentioned, about white people tanning in the whole trip. And like what that has with it, not only is it an attempt to, maybe it's a subconscious attempt, you know, by white people to come closer to blackness, like she said. More than that, it's a function of the fact that they have time to lay out in the sun and get dark. You know, that's the point of the whole thing. Because like in a couple of classes, I asked them, like, why y'all always trying to, you know, get out in the sun and burn your skin up like that? And you know, they responded very frankly. But you know, that whole situation could be explained in terms of status, and in terms of prestige, and in terms of leisure, and in terms of wealth. You know, that you have the time to get out and lay out in the sun and darken your skin.
As a novelty because of the economic promise that you
And by
have.
the same token, at this point in time, you know, like it's rapidly becoming a novelty to be black.
Yeah.
Very much. I mean, you know, skin color wise.
Well, now this is a good point, you know, that you bringing up. Whether, let's say, the lighter skinned blacks now want to be darker. Who would like to answer that? Shook your head there. Yeah. Don't look around. What would you say?
I personally feel that the blacker you are, the better you are, you know. And I'm looking at it from, you know, my own standpoint of view. And I said, yeah, I'll be out in the sun trying to get me a tan. But that's the way I view that.
Well, you said the blacker you are, the better you are. Well,
I mean, that's, like he said, that's becoming the thing, you know.
I see. Okay, then now, in actuality, do you believe that? Huh?
Not really.
Not really. Well, then why don't you?
Well, people are just
Don't talk.
Okay. Okay, blackness, okay, is becoming more and more rapidly, you know, like he says, the thing. And since white society in the past has looked at the lighter the individual is, the more he can be accepted and all and so on and so forth. But I feel that the place for the black man will be just as the man that's black, you know, I'm not saying, you know, the lighter shade. Okay, he will probably be, or he is, and is getting up there just like the person that's lighter. Or even a higher step.
So in other words, you feel that right now, because of the saying with all its ramifications, that black is beautiful, you know, that the blacker a person is now, the easier the ladder, let's say, to social and economic success to a certain degree. Easter?
I believe that because, you know, like, I see, for instance, you know, I'm real dark, but if a job, for instance, if me and Paul, you know, went for the same job, I believe I would get hired quicker than he would, you know. Because this blacker, you know, blacker you are, the better you are thing, I believe that.
blacker you are, the better you are. Not actually better you are, but because of the
Not in
time.
that sense, the
Sense.
better you are, but you know.
Because of the times that we
Yes,
live in.
yes.
Uh-huh. Mhm. Now, we have some more comment here on this hotly debated question.
Yeah, I'll say one thing. I know,
Mr. Poe.
Yeah, thank you.
Director of Black Education.
Right.
Go right ahead, Mr. Poe.
I know my nephew and my little brother were once models for Ebony. You know, they shoot pictures and you get paid $10 a shot, $15 a shot. And after a while, my little brother didn't get any more shots. And that's the tendency towards Ebony anyhow, is to put more blacker people in their magazine. And that before it was a tendency to have the lighter colored black people. So there is a definite tendency as far as acceptability and marketability, even in taking pictures for ads, that color still plays an important part. And the trend is towards the darker you are, the more marketable you are.
Mm-hmm. Michelle?
A lot of businesses, there's still a lot of businesses, white businesses, they tend to think the lighter you are, the more trustworthy you are, from the same ideology that back in the old times, you know, they had stereotypes. The blacker you were, the more sullen you were, the lazier you were, the more low down and
Evil.
you know, evil you were. And so, just like now, one time I went for a job, and one time my friend went for a job. My friend was really dark. And the only reason, I found out later, the only reason that she didn't get it was because she was dark. And they trusted me more because I was lighter than she was. And a lot of businesses, they still think that. And magazines like Ebony and stuff, they'll go towards the blacker because, you know, Ebony's a black magazine and they want to promote more black pride and all this. But in general, I think the white businesses, they tend to still go with the lighter you are, the more trustworthy you are, and all this kind of stuff, and more acceptable. Because they feel like they can relate to you better.
Because you have more white blood in you.
Because you're closer to them, yeah.
Uh-huh. No, right there in the back.
Now, I was just going to point out, too, that, like your brother mentioned about the darker people in Ebony, but at the same time, you know, probably because of whatever economic reasons, like Ebony still runs the bleaching cream commercials in its magazine. You know, and so, like, what it has is, like, a latent psychological effect on people that continue to read Ebony magazine. You know, at the same time, like, it's an inherent contradiction, almost. You know, and it amplifies the fact that, you know, black people are still hung up into like novelties and getting sidetracked on various kinds of, I hate to use the word, but various kinds of tribute. Instead of dealing with real and pressing kinds of problems facing black people in total. You know, and granted that slavery and all the other processes of the American experience has had like a definite psychological effect on black people. You know, we have to like acknowledge those effects and move from there to deal with, you know, other kinds of things that we have to deal with.
Well, you know, this is very true. See, the only thing about it is that most people do not really want to acknowledge the effect. You know, and it's bringing them to the awareness of the effect about it. You know, it's just like one class I was teaching one time, you know, and I overheard two white students talking, and we were talking about some of the same things we were talking about in class today. You know, say, well, gee whiz, I didn't know, you know, that black people were hung up on so much stuff, you know, as we were talking about in this color. See, it has a tremendous amount to do with how you view yourself, and how you view yourself is going to be how you act and how you react to the public. It's going to be how you can look at yourself in the mirror and really say, well, I am black and I am beautiful. No, really. Or either you'd be sitting there and say, gee whiz, now how would it be if I had long hair here, a little lighter skin? See, and even today with many black men, they still feel, you know, that the lighter a young lady is, you know, sometimes with longer hair and with the light features, you know, this automatically gives them, as you might say, their passport. Gives them their passport. Why does it give them their passport? Because of the value system that we've been taught. See, even though a lot of blacks are proclaiming black is beautiful, see, they still haven't really developed a black value system. See, the European system, this is what we're judging ourselves by. The white Anglo-Saxon, or just the WASP tradition. That's what we're doing. You know, we're not developing our own traditions. It's the same way we view ourselves in history, you know, which is really mainly white history. You know, one reason why we're doing this class now, to try and put things in perspective. You know, because just like we said before, you know, you can still look at textbooks today and see where the black man is placed in the textbooks. And that's really out of them. See, and then, as we said before, without any history, you don't have any background. And without any background, you can't have any future. That's one reason why it's so important, really. Got a question back here. All these hands up here. No, Mr. Poe?
Yeah, when I was growing up anyhow, I never thought there was any difference between light-skinned black people or dark-skinned black people. And I still think that, you know, white people make it clear if you're black, no matter how light you are. You still are in that category. And when Marcus Garvey came to the United States, he had sort of a different impression. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because we have a fellow from Jamaica there in the back, right? And I want to find out if they still have that complex over there. Is it, you know, the separation between light-skinned blacks and dark-skinned blacks?
You do have some American business back home, and they do hire light-skinned people. So it's going to be like the same thing over here.
But what's the attitude of the black Jamaicans themselves? Do they divide themselves off into light and dark?
Well, like, you know, the black people, they keep themselves to themselves, and they still be with your clear skin, you know, more on the white side. Because like I believe if you're black, you're more a nigger. If you're a nigger, I think if you're light skin, you're more from the white race.
Well, this is probably very true. You know, it's just like, you know, when we're talking about Toussaint Overture in Haiti, you know, before Toussaint really could get things going, they had to have a little race war down there themselves, which was the blacks versus the mulattoes. You know, the blacks won, and this destroyed their class down there. And this was really brought on because of the way people, you know, viewed themselves and looked at themselves. Yes, Berlin?
Oh, yeah, well, I want to say, wouldn't you say that this is the same difference between the Africans and the black Americans? Blacks? Because this is what they do. They discriminate between the, like, we're wearing naturals and saying, you know, that we're Afro-Americans, and they're saying, no, that we don't have any, you know.
Ethnic identity with them?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
and if you go to their country, you know, it's, you know, such things that, you know, they want to associate with it.
Well, only thing I can do in this situation, too bad that we don't have some Africans here with us. I've had a chance to know quite a few, and I've been in Africa, and there's a certain type of kinship, you know, that's experienced. A lot of African societies have class caste. Just like you can go over into Nigeria and you have one of the greatest class caste societies in Africa over there. This is one reason why they were having that war. It wasn't so much a war with the Europeans, it was a war between the different classes and who was going to rule and who wasn't. I don't know, this has been somewhat of a general feeling that the American black and the African black are not able to identify with each other to a certain degree. But I would have a tendency to disagree with this to a degree because Africans view themselves differently than blacks, mainly because their history is different. Our history is one of slavery, being freed for 100 years. Even though they have been colonialized in Africa and almost under a certain imperialistic system, their type of attitude and the way they view themselves is entirely different. The way a Jamaican or a Haitian looks at themselves and the way that an American black look at themselves is entirely different. See, because you could take a Haitian where they have fought for their freedom, they won their freedom, they feel differently. They feel much differently. Now we're still over here, you know, and although there's much talk revolutionary talk, you know, it doesn't seem very feasible, you know, that there will be revolution. Riots maybe, but never, let's say, a mass revolution. And there's a different feeling you get fighting in a revolution, or let's say taking part in a march, when you actually are giving up your life for something you hold dear, you know. Therefore, the mentality, you know, that they look at us with, when I say us, I'm talking about the blacks in America, is entirely different. Mainly because they have a different historical background and a different historical perspective. So therefore, you know, naturally, there's going to be a certain amount of differentiation between the two. But I don't actually and earnestly believe, let's say, that the Africans really do not view us as brothers in arms, you know. I feel, you know, that they do have, and we should have also direct kinship with them, you know, because we've been in America a long time, and our roots are in America, you know, in America, even though our cultural roots and ethnic roots are in Africa. The same way with the Europeans. You know, their cultural and ethnic roots are in Europe, even though they've been here for hundreds of years, and that's the same comparison and analogy, you know, that we can make when using it, you know, with the Africans also. I don't know, maybe I skirted around the question there.
Well, one thing about it, see, I believe a rose is a rose, see. And, yeah, I do. So, well, my own personal belief is I believe that I am African. You know, I'm not saying I was not born in Africa. I was born in Los Angeles, California. But I am of African descent. Okay, and I know they don't, okay, and yeah, I know that. And, you know, like, when I had an African professor to tell me, you know, I was talking about that I wanted to go to Africa, and he says, well, what if black Americans go to Africa and want hamburgers, you know? And I said, well, you know, it depends on where your head is. You know, my head is further than a hamburger. You know,
very good point.
If you value something so much that, you know, a hamburger doesn't mean anything to me than pride and heritage and my dignity and my black people. See, so like I understand that, and I've been confronted with it, and, you know, I've been hurt, you know, by African people telling me things like that, you know. But I still believe a rose is a rose. You know, African is African. Them white folks tell you, yes, my father was an Englishman. You know, they tell you that, you know, and my grandmother is French, you know, and I'm Italian, and they've been living here 20,000 years, you know, and I don't believe that blacks don't ever be Americans.
Well, you know, whether you want to believe it or not, this is the land you live in, and you are a citizen, quote unquote, of this land, you know. And, you know, all right, and we all agree, you know, that all black people here, you know, do have African ancestry, you know. But then again, and as far as basically saying, you know, where your home is right now, that's in America. And,
disagree.
Okay, well, I know everybody's going to disagree, at least some people. You know, and I expect everybody to disagree or agree with me. This is good, you know. Don't ever disagree. I said, take it back, agree. Get along?
We look like Chinese. The Chinese guy was reared in L.A., where it's associated him with Chinese people, right? Well, we look like Africans, don't we? Right?
Right.
Well, thank you.
Now that's a point well made, Mr. Goodlow. Listen, I don't have any qualms as far as being associated with African origin. See, I did not say, you know, that our origin was not African, but I was saying that your home is here in America. This is what I was saying.
Let me clarify. What I'm saying like this. Well, when we first came, it was what? We went Afro. We had a tag Afro, right? We were Negroes. You know. Well, a Chinese. Well, he's a Chinese first. You know, right? How come we can't be Afro first? You know, a Negro. You know, or black. I would be called Afro, but than just plain black. You know. That's more closer to home than just black. You know?
Okay. Well, this is good. Well, see, everybody. See, here's the thing about it. See, with the black race, Afro race, Negro race, American, Afro-American race. No, everybody says that. Is that everybody takes their own ethnic identity. everybody takes their own ethnic identity. It's just like one day in class, grad school, I heard this she's fairly light black girl. She says, well, I have French, Spanish, Dutch, and Polish in my family. You know, now she's black, but she didn't have any black in her family. You know, but this is what she chose. This is what she chose. But see, here's the thing about it. A rose was still a rose. See, what is a rose for you?
No, Mr. Franklin, now,
Well, hold it. Let me finish, Beverly.
Okay,
All
go
right?
ahead, finish.
Now, what is a rose? See, what is a rose for you can be something else for somebody else. See, and the way a person views themselves is going to be the mentality and environment that they have been influenced with.
That's true.
Okay.
But if I walk into that door, then that door is there, and I'm gonna get hit when I walk into that door. Just because I don't think it's not there, that don't mean it's not there. And just because I think I'm Dutch, French, and whatever else she was, that don't mean that she, you know, it was evident that she was black. Anybody that's black or anybody that's white and has black heritage, it's evident, right? You cannot, there's no one in this room that you cannot look at and see that they have obvious black ancestry. Now, just because I say I'm not black or I do not admit to the fact that I'm not black, that don't mean I'm not black. Just because I look at that rose and say, you know, there's no thorns on that flower, it's not a rose, it's still a rose. And if I put my hand down there, I'm going to get pricked.
Mm-hmm. Well, listen, I'm not quarreling with you on the view of it. See, it's the idea is the person is going to view themselves according to the way they want to see themselves, regardless of what they are, going back to the old mentality game again, which says, well, even though I do have this blood in me, I do have these certain features, because I look like this is what I want to be. This is what I want to be. It's just like last week they had on a Band of Angels, and they had this mulatto. She was playing, posing as a mistress. And the Union troops that finally captured the city of New Orleans. Anyway, they says, well, they were saying, she's swearing out this complaint against this soldier, and had a description of the complainee. And young, 26, unmarried, and white. And when they said white, she jumped. Her hair stood up almost. She says, I finally made it. See, this is what she wanted. Even though she knew she was black. You see? So everybody views themselves in their own conceptual context, regardless of whether or not they want to. It's just like I could say, I'm an Indian. You know.
No nigga. No nigga did anything else.
When the Africans came over here, the first Africans came over here were indentured servants. And after their time was spent doing whatever they were doing, they were free. And there were a few Africans that were freed when they first came over here. But the idea that they need manpower for the capital exploitation they were doing to the land, this developed the slavery that was prevalent in the early part of the history of the United States. And what I'm saying is that the black people who came over here were really just like the white people. There was no class. At first. That's what I'm saying, at first.
See, what Ms. Ishii is saying is that when the first blacks came over, they came over as indentured servants. See, at no time in American history have all people, when I say all people, I'm talking about all black people, been slaves. So in other words, what I'm saying is that ever since 1619, you've always had free blacks in America. In other words, everybody at no time was always a slave.
That's a conflict of history. It's like facts, you know. Like I've been reading this Malcolm X on Afro-American history. He said blacks were kidnapped. You know, the first black were kidnapped, you know, out of Africa and brought here as slaves, and for no other purposes but to be slaves. And you said that they were brought here as indentured servants. You know? And so that's
See, wait,
a
we're
conflict
talking,
right there.
well, no, see, we're talking about, see now, if you wanna get to the main, item, the main person, this is Anthony Johnson we're talking about, first of all. See, it's that the Spaniards had slaves over here before 1619 in Florida already, and in Mexico. See, but actually what we're using right now is English colonization time and period. This is what we're saying, and this is where, with 13 colonies. Demetrius?
Yeah, I want to ask a question. Indentured servants was brought over here. What was they worked the land? But what did they? Did they work the land because they was brought over here on a boat ride or what?
Now, see, here's what happened. When they were brought over, the Dutch. The English purchased them as indentured servants. See, because slavery had not started yet in the colonies. Therefore, as indentured servants, they only had a certain amount of years to perform their labor. After that, they were freed. See, but as the economics changed.
How come they indentured service in the first place?
Because this is one way you could bound a person to work for you legally, to clear up a debt or fulfill some type of economic venture that you had.
What was the debt was to the what? The Englishmen or what?
To the English, right then.
Well, why were they indebted to the English?
Yeah.
They were indebted to the English because the Englishmen brought them from the Dutch. That's why.
Bought them?
Bought them from the Dutch.
Well, they were slaves.
They were slaves in the beginning.
Yeah, but see, their status changed when they came over. That's what I'm saying. Okay.
He said, what Art said was that when they first came over, they were getting servants. But that's just the Englishmen. When they were first brought over in the first place, were all slaves. Because they came over with the Spanish from the very beginning.
Yeah, well, we're not acknowledge that. Okay, keep arguing.